faithfully sharing value and exploring great books from around the world. Hi, this is Sally from Book Talk. Today we're diving into the book Beethoven's Biography for you. What you just heard is one of Beethoven's most classic works.
Symphony number 5, Fate.
What comes to mind when you think of Beethoven? Which of his works left the deepest impression on you? Feel free to leave your thoughts and discuss in the comments. Beethoven is one of the greatest composers in the history of world music. His works profoundly influenced the development of global music, earning him titles like Saint of Music and King of Symphony. Beethoven published 79 works in his lifetime, with his symphonies being the most famous, including the well-known Symphony No. 3 in E-flat major, like Symphony No. 3, Eroica, Symphony No. 5 in C minor, Fate, Piano Sonata No. 14 in C minor, Moonlight, and so on. There are also hundreds of versions of his biography. We've chosen the most widely circulated version, written by the famous author Romain Rolland, translated by Mr. Foulet. This slim booklet under 100,000 words has elegant language and is easy to grasp. It avoids obscure music terms and forced praise, instead painting the real Beethoven, his musical path, defiance against fate, and even character flaws, vividly. This book is hailed as one of the world's 3 greatest biographies, alongside Life of Michelangelo, Romain Rolland's biography, and Tolstoy's biography. But I'll tell Beethoven's life story in 2 parts for you. In the first part, we'll focus on Beethoven's first 30 years, exploring how this musical genius was born and navigated amid life's twists. In the second part, we'll cover his life from middle to old age, including his tragic love and the famous pieces it inspired. Finally, we'll summarize his musical achievements and reflect on his life's legacy. Now, we'll start the first part's interpretation. I'll break it into 3 sections. Section 1, The Birth of a Genius, A Strict Childhood. Section 2, The Era's Fortunate One, His Vienna Music Journey. Section 3, The Despair of Deafness and New Chances. Section 1, The Birth of a Genius, A Strict Childhood. Section 2, The Era's Fortunate One, His Vienna Music Journey. Section 3, The Despair of Deafness and New Opportunities.
Named Ludwig van Beethoven.
Beethoven's father, Johann, was a court tenor. There are multiple versions regarding the introduction of Beethoven's mother. Romain Rolland claimed Beethoven's mother, Maria, was a maid, daughter of a cook, depicting Beethoven's childhood as impoverished. But later records reveal Maria came from nobility as the daughter of the head chef in the royal kitchen, and while not wealthy, Beethoven's family maintained a respectable household with servants. The family's first child died young, making Beethoven the eldest son. He had 2 younger brothers close in age, Karl and Nicholas. This family of 5 lived long near the Rhine River, forming what could be called a musical dynasty. Beethoven's grandfather was a court Kapellmeister, highly respected by local musicians. In 18th century Europe, sons commonly inherited their father's professions, with many families continuing the same trade for generations. Thus, Beethoven's father, Johann, received keyboard and vocal training from his own father since childhood. However, with mediocre talent, he failed to become Kapellmeister, settling as a court tenor with barely enough income for the family, often needing his father's financial support. Fortunately, the grandfather's musical talent wasn't wasted. It skipped a generation to Beethoven. For instance, once when Johann taught Beethoven violin, he found him improvising his own melodies instead of practicing the score. Initially, Johann flew into a rage. "What on earth are you playing? Playing correct notes is what puts food on the table." But young Beethoven ignored his father's scolding, asking instead, "Isn't this beautiful?" Due to his father's disapproval, young Beethoven often secretly played his improvised pieces. Though musically average, Johann wasn't foolish. After hearing his son's secret compositions, Johann recognized Beethoven's extraordinary talent and began rigorous training to mold him into a money-earning prodigy like Mozart. And thus, from age 4, Beethoven endured his father's grueling training regimen. Young Beethoven was confined indoors all day with either a piano or violin before him. His father often forced him to study with violence because he himself had endured this strict, rod-based education as a child. From grandfather to father, their family's discipline always involved shouting, beating, and threats.
If Beethoven acted even slightly mischievous or rebellious, his father would lock him in the dark basement.
His brother Karl also studied piano and became a teacher, but never made it as a musician, whether due to genetics or the harsh rod-based experiences from childhood piano lessons. Beethoven, along with his grandfather, father, and brother Karl, all developed a hot-tempered and irritable personality, causing Beethoven great pain in handling emotions later in life. Only the youngest brother, Nicholas, received no music education. He left an impression of gentleness and kindness, which was truly unique in Beethoven's family. His father was not only Beethoven's initiator into keyboard instruments and violin, but also a shrewd marketer at the start of Beethoven's solo career. Johann was very sociable early on, so he had Beethoven perform gratis at the court.
This was to ensure everyone in Bonn's music circles knew that in 1778 he began marketing Beethoven by copying Mozart's path to fame.
At the time, the prodigy Mozart composed his first work at age 5.
At 6, he toured Europe performing with his father and sister, quickly becoming a legend.
Thus, Johann also had Beethoven perform at home, in court, and at prominent houses in the city, plus on short trips to nearby areas. Starting at age 8, Beethoven studied under the court organist Aden and the musician Pfeiffer at the National Theatre. From these two teachers, he learned the basics of composition and keyboard instruments, respectively. This laid the foundation for his future creative path. With his own talent and his father's active marketing, 10-year-old Beethoven gradually gained fame among local music lovers, becoming a favorite at home concerts. Also at age 10, Beethoven met his most important mentor in life, Neef, who served as the court music director. Neef was a famous composer, organist, writer, and poet of the time, and also a proponent of the Enlightenment. His teaching style was encouraging rather than intimidating. Neef, he taught Beethoven the Enlightenment ideals of reason, freedom, human responsibility, and the pursuit of joy, helping Beethoven grow into an Enlightenment thinker and directly influencing his later works, especially the Ode to Joy. I'll detail how, under Neef's guidance, the 11-year-old Beethoven, with extraordinary musical talent, joined the theater orchestra. At 13, he became an organist performing gratis at court. Beethoven's debut as a genius was propelled by this teacher. In early 1783, 12-year-old Beethoven composed the Dressler Variations. Teacher Neef facilitated its publication and promoted it heavily in music magazines and among musicians. In the magazine, Neef proudly claimed the 10-year-old Beethoven had composed a set of 9 piano variations. Published in Mannheim, this young genius was destined to become the second Mozart. Note, Beethoven's age was deliberately reduced by 2 years here, another of his father's marketing tactics. This was Beethoven's first attempt at variations, yet his musical genius and comprehensive grasp of composition already shone brilliantly in this work. These variations marked young Beethoven's creative dawn, transforming him from near performer to true composer. Looking back at Beethoven's childhood, music, voluntarily or not, consumed his entire existence from the start. Beginning at 4 or 5, music education came with beatings. This caused him deep anguish. Gifted, yet raised without tenderness. Thus, childhood left him ignorant of any world beyond music, dooming him to lifelong loneliness without understanding love. When Beethoven was 14, the old elector died. Electors, literally emperor-choosers, were a unique German phenomenon. Princes who elected Holy Roman emperors. After the old elector's death, the new elector Franz arrived in Bonn, launching a golden age of artistic prosperity and Enlightenment ideals. This elector adored the arts, having studied vocal music and viola in Vienna. Under his rule, Bonn's court orchestra rose to become one of Germany's finest. Folk music thrived, and 15-year-old Beethoven began intensive court performances. He also performed in theaters and chapels while teaching keyboard to nobles and officials' children. It's this workload brought family income while drawing attention to Beethoven's talent from nobles, officials, clergy, including the elector himself. With the elector's support, 16-year-old Beethoven traveled alone to Vienna, Europe's music hub, to deepen his studies and start performing. But because his mother was critically ill, Beethoven soon returned home. On July 14, 1789, a group of armed Parisians stormed the Bastille fortress. This fortress symbolized the tyranny of the old regime. The French Revolution began, spreading Enlightenment ideals of equality and freedom across Europe, which also captured Beethoven's heart. Oh. 3 years later, war spread to Bonn, and Beethoven officially left his hometown, moving to Vienna, the city of music. Beethoven carried only a few belongings and music manuscripts. En route, he encountered Hessian troops heading to France. Inspired by patriotism, he set local war poems to music, one a march, the other, "We Are the Great German Nation." Vienna had about 200,000 residents, 20 times Beethoven's hometown. Its music scene was vibrant, with many nobles loving music. In Vienna, Beethoven's income came from composing, teaching, and performing, like many musicians then. But being a professional musician wasn't a big moneymaker. If you were a composer or performer wanting to showcase yourself in Vienna, you had to rent a hall, organize a chamber orchestra, and sell tickets yourself. Mozart was once a star in Vienna, with nobles buying tickets, but newcomer Beethoven wasn't as lucky. His concerts rarely made money and often lost it. Though earnings were poor, he at least got recognized. Stylish Viennese didn't like this eccentric outsider at first. A noblewoman at a music gathering described him. Beethoven was short, plain, with an ugly, pockmarked face, messy dark hair, and plain clothes with a provincial accent. His quick rise in music-rich Vienna was thanks to his teacher Haydn and nobles like Lichnowsky. Haydn was Vienna's famous court music master, but he and Beethoven met in Bonn, where Haydn was already renowned. Haydn visited Bonn, introduced by nobles. Young Beethoven became his student. In Vienna, they attended concerts and discussed compositions together. Though their musical styles clashed, master and apprentice often argued. Fortunately, Haydn's gentle and tolerant nature meant he never held grudges against his fiery-tempered student. Thanks to Haydn's pivotal status in Vienna's music scene, Beethoven's path there wasn't overly difficult. Besides Haydn, Beethoven had another crucial benefactor in Vienna. Prince Lichnowsky, a nobleman, was the city's foremost music patron who greatly admired Beethoven's talent. For Beethoven needing to establish himself in Vienna, Lichnowsky provided not just funding, but vital connections. Lichnowsky's Friday music gatherings drew top musicians and enthusiasts, where Beethoven networked with more patrons and quickly gained broader recognition. There was an amusing misunderstanding. Beethoven's van suggested noble ancestry to Vienna society. Thus, many in Vienna wrongly assumed he came from nobility. By early 1793, Beethoven had joined Vienna's ranks of master performers. In 1794, he became Vienna's most sought-after pianist. Among both aristocratic and music circles, he was a highly valued, proud young artist. Beethoven was fortunate historically. No era like the French Revolution had placed music so centrally in public life as education and moral enlightenment, creating fertile ground for talents like him. Beethoven was lucky, but more often unlucky. In late 1797, Beethoven contracted a severe illness, likely typhus. Typhus brought weeks of body aches, fever, coughing, coma, delirium, severely damaging nervous systems and causing insomnia and tinnitus, usually fatal then. Yet, Beethoven didn't succumb. He recovered fully. He narrowly survived and returned to work, but tragedy's seeds were sown. According to Beethoven's recollection, his deafness began after an extreme rage episode. He'd been arguing about music with a tenor in his apartment. After leaving, the tenor returned and knocked while Beethoven composed, making him leap up convulsively in fury. After falling to the ground and getting up, he said, "I found myself deaf, and it's been like this ever since." Some analysis suggests this rage-induced convulsion was merely a catalyst. His deafness likely originated from typhus, childhood smallpox after effects, or trauma from his father's beatings. Oh. Fortunately, he wasn't fully deaf, just temporarily impaired. His hearing soon returned partially, but not completely. From then on, his ears endured a constant symphony of shrieks, buzzing, and humming that drove him mad day and night. Frantically, he sought doctors, but all treatments were useless. Remember, medicine needed over half a century more to treat such conditions. Back then, people knew nothing of bacteria or viruses. No antibiotics existed, and nervous system structure was a mystery. Doctors couldn't even determine the true trigger for his deafness. Beethoven consulted doctor after doctor who used bloodletting, warm or cold baths, and toxic bark bindings. These only tormented him and worsened his temper, without any benefit. In the early years of hearing loss, the proud 27-year-old maestro hid his impairment. Fearing it would ruin his performing career, he concealed it from everyone, avoiding meetings to prevent discovery of his disability. He guarded this terrible secret alone, not even telling his closest friends. Not until 1801 did he despairingly confide in two friends about his anguish. His turmoil was reflected in one of his works at the time. He'd written tragic music before, but none like the Pathetique Sonata, composed in 1799. Experiencing deafness felt like slow death. The Pathetique Sonata echoes this solemn tragedy. From the fiery impulse of the first movement to the settled calm of the second, then the bold passion resurgence in the third, the light-dark contrast mirrors life's sorrows and joys. Despite deafness, Beethoven remained musically active, but gradually shifted from performing to composing. From autumn 1815, he became completely deaf, communicating only by a pen and paper, a fatal blow for a musician. His closest friend recorded a disastrous scene where Beethoven himself conducted a rehearsal. Beethoven insisted on conducting the final rehearsal himself, starting from the second part of Act 1. But clearly unable to hear the singers, he slowed the tempo excessively. While the orchestra followed his baton, the singers rushed ahead independently, causing chaos. After a break request and restart, the same disorder recurred, forcing another halt. Under Beethoven's direction, the rehearsal became impossibly derailed. But how to make him understand?
No one could bear to say, "Go, poor soul. You cannot conduct anymore."
Amid the chaos, Beethoven grew agitated. Scanning faces for clues to no avail, he suddenly commanded his friend, who recalled. As I approached, he handed me his conversation book. I wrote, "Please stop, I'll explain later at home." He then leapt off stage shouting to me, "Quick, let's go!" He sprinted home without stopping. Inside, he collapsed motionless on his bed, face buried in hands, maintaining this posture of profound agony through dinner, silent. After dinner, when I tried leaving, he begged me not to leave him alone. When I prepared to depart again, he asked me to accompany him to the doctor. Fate plays cruel jokes, gifting Beethoven extraordinary talent in the Enlightenment's peak, then stealing his hearing at his zenith. Yet Beethoven remained unbroken. Let's return to his early deafness years. He once said, hearing troubled him most daily, but least while composing. In deep concentration, he could mute the inner noise, focusing solely on drafting scores. Thus, his works from that decade weren't all somber. Many, like the joyful septet and crystalline First Symphony, radiate light. These pieces elevated him further, earning substantial income from sheet music sales and successful public concerts. By 1800, even Vienna's commoners knew of composer Beethoven. That year, he held his first self-composed concert for Vienna citizens at the Theater Ender Wien. This marked Beethoven's first commercial performance using his own compositions.
At the concert, he performed his newly composed First Symphony, First Piano Concerto, and Septet. The First Symphony, Beethoven's symphonic debut, features a joyful allegro and lively light andante, especially its third movement's humor and tutti power that transcend courtly minuets with strong playfulness.
These works received enthusiastic public response, reflecting youthful innocence and resilience. In Beethoven's world, glorious past couldn't be erased. When illness stole beauty, its light still shone enduringly. This concert's success meant more to Beethoven than mere fame. Remember, Europe was undergoing massive changes. French Revolution ideals, Napoleon's campaigns, accelerating commoners' rise and commercial growth. For composers like Beethoven, aristocratic patronage declined, while wealthy commoners created new music demand. Realistically, the era opened a new revenue stream that would eventually surpass royal sponsorships. All right, we've covered Beethoven's strict childhood and musical beginnings, his Vienna struggles and deafness-induced despair. By 1800, 30-year-old Beethoven remained unaware he'd lose all hearing in 15 years. He still performed and composed actively, soon to experience his first profound love. Though his loves ended painfully, they inspired humanity's most iconic musical pieces. Beethoven's loves and inspirations, his dramatic struggles, later years, and musical legacy. We'll explore these in the next episode of Beethoven's biography. That's all for this episode. You'll find the reading notes below the audio. See you next time.